The removal of police departments, the defunding of police departments. The Civil War continues, and finally, somebody didn't respond very well to one of Trump's emails. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. I want you to walk with me for just a moment here while we figure out how the left does politics and how that ends up for you every single time. Here's what happens. The left will find something to be outraged about. All right, murder of George Floyd. That's funny because that was universal, left and right. Everybody saw that and was all, that's murder? You can't do that. So everybody's mad. Okay, they get the cops arrested. It's fine. But the left loves outrage. Remember, outrage is how the left moves the meter. The right does not. I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing in the end because they seem to be more effective than we are. But the left will find outrage and turn it up about 1,000 meters so it's just blasting. And that's why you see what you're seeing across the country. Some of this is organized. Some of this is organic. Some of it's just a bunch of angry, unemployed young men. Some of it's a bunch of scumbag gangbangers. It's all over the place. The problem is eventually people are going to look around. This always happens with the left and ask, okay, what do you want? And racism. Again, that's not a solution. What do you want? And now this has happened so many times, the left has to come up with something. And they almost have to come up with something on the fly, right? Because end racism is not a policy solution. You can't sit down and write a law and say, end racism law, and that's nothing. Well, the first thing to gain any legs with this whole thing has been, and the police, and people were all, whoa, okay, probably a little far. And then that turned into, because the first thing they say is always horrific, so they try to dial it down a little more to, no, defund the police. Well, wait a minute, that's the same as ending police. And now they're doing that thing. Now they're on stage 3. Remember, stage 1 is always something absurd. Stage 2 is kind of a better explanation for the absurd thing. Stage 3 is always them telling you what they initially said isn't really what they said and what they mean at all. Now they're doing the thing, well, defunding the police doesn't mean eliminating the police. It'd be ridiculous, even though the Minneapolis City Council just announced they have a veto-proof majority commitment to eliminate their police department. The Los Angeles mayor already has committed to cutting $100 to $150 million from his police department. Oh, now it's got legs. And that's how all these things happen. It's not that there's nothing to be outraged about in the beginning. They found something. I mean, there was something. We all saw it. There was something to be outraged about. All they have to be concerned about in the beginning is making sure enough people are mad. Because once they get enough people mad, then they know they can drop whatever insane policy they want in there, and the people will be so angry and need an outlet for that, need something to do, that you'll get people going along with it. Now, all that sounds nice, and in the end, frankly, it works for them. It works in shifting that Overton window on what the public will accept and won't accept. We already have police reform bills being proposed by Democrats and Republicans, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So yes, they've already shifted the window. Well, we need federal police reform. Huh? Why do federal police reform? When has the federal government ever gotten involved and solved a problem? Like, ever. They make every single problem worse. That's not a solution. And of course, Democrats and Republicans, because they're both idiots, will go along with this whole thing. But that's not the point. The point of it is this. Now, this policy's got legs. Eliminate the police, defund the police, whatever you want to call it. Now it has legs. Now people are penciling out specifics, and some of these specifics are, wow. Here's one from Portland. Quote, more than 800 parents, teachers, and students have signed the request asking Portland schools to terminate an agreement with the Portland Police Department for the use of 2 school resource officers. They're trying to take the cops out of the schools, the cops who are specifically in schools to prevent the mass shootings that have caught on since that horrific mass shooting in Columbine. Oh, just so you don't think Portland's all alone, Madison, Wisconsin. Madison Teachers Union backs removal of police from high schools. Oh, wait, there's more. Denver. The majority of the Denver School Board shows support for removing police from schools. Ted Cruz is rightly horrified by this whole thing. He took to Twitter and said, Dems have lost their minds. Having met repeatedly with victims, parents, and teachers hurt by gun violence in schools, the single most effective way to keep our kids safe is more armed police officers in schools. This idiotic proposal would tragically result in more school shootings. So, what's the answer? What do they really want? Well, if you would like to know what they really want, here's as specific as they seem to get.
What happens if there's a criminal out there with a gun and starts shooting people? Who's going to respond if there's no police force?
Look, it is our top priority to keep every single member of our community safe. And if you look back at the last 150 years of our police department, it is becoming increasingly clear that that model of policing isn't working. So we need to invite in our whole community, the 9 members of the city council that came from every corner of our city to stand together to make this commitment. We don't have all the answers. And what we committed to was a community process to help reimagine public safety. So yes, we still have a police department in Minneapolis today. I hope it won't take 150 years to get to that looking forward, that next solution. But we have a lot of wisdom in our community. We have invested in community-based safety strategies. We did an analysis of all the reasons people call 911 in our city to look at ways we can have an appropriate response. So we've laid the groundwork, and in many ways, this will be incremental change over many years.
Okay, so you don't know. You know, there's a great rule for you parents out there, one I'm sure you're well aware of. If I walk into the kitchen and I see a glass of spilled milk on the counter that hasn't been cleaned up, and I bring both of my sons in, and I say, son number 1, did you spill that milk? And he says, no, wasn't me. And I say, son number 2, did you spill that milk? And he said, well, I was out back the whole time. It was actually, you should have seen the thunderclouds outside. It was wild. And then I picked up this lizard. And then you should say, by the way, I found a wasp nest out there. Did I tell you about the worms I caught? That's the one who did it. The longer the answer, the less they know. When you ask somebody what they're going to do when a bad guy is breaking into their home and their answer isn't A, pull out my weapon and shoot them, or B, call the police, that means they don't have any idea what they're going to do. And on this whole defund and eliminate the police thing, if you want to have a little experiment in that, because that's not unheard of in the history of mankind, right? No police department, no organized government police department. Okay, fine. Fine. If you want to do that, it's fine. But you get that if you're one of these absolute lefty, disarmed loons in one of these big cities who's going to go from being somebody who pees themselves at the gun range when someone goes bang to having no police, you realize you're now prey, right? That's a big, big jump. If you're going to do the we don't need cops thing, you might want to bone up on your firearms training, because you are like the 400-pound man that shows up to run the Boston Marathon. You're going to die if you don't do some prep work beforehand. But the best part of all this defund police, eliminate the police thing, the best part, it's political suicide. And everyone knows it, even Joe Biden.
No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community.
You see, Joe Biden doesn't have the luxury of being a sidewalk street radical with a megaphone in his hands. I hate cops. Joe Biden has to run to be president of the United States of America. You don't get to be president of the United States of America unless Rust Belt swing voters vote for you. And if you think the voters of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio here eliminate police and they think that's a good idea, you got another thing coming. It is fun, though, to watch these Democrats constantly have to juggle that. Their insane base with, things that are actually politically viable. I, for one, am going to enjoy it. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Now, sleep makes me comfortable. My bed makes me comfortable. And you know what the worst part is? If I go to bed and I can't sleep. Because my bed's waiting for me, right? I'm exhausted. I go crawl into bed. I got the comfy sheets and the thick blanket. I got it freezing cold in the room, and I need a good night's sleep because I'm exhausted from bestowing my wisdom on you all day. And I close my eyes, and then I can't stop thinking. And I can't turn my mind off. And I'm thinking about the day I had and how awesome I was. And I'm thinking about the day tomorrow, how awesome I'm going to be. And soon it's 1 a.m. and I'm staring at the clock and knowing I'm going to be here on camera with big bags under my eyes. I look like George Soros. You don't have to go through that. Get an Ebb sleep. Go to tryebb.com/Jesse. It's a wearable device that will put you asleep and keep you asleep without taking sleeping pills. Tryebb.com/Jesse. Use the promo code Jesse at checkout. Get $25 off. We'll be back. What if we're focusing on the wrong things? Hear me out here. You and I have had this conversation before, so some of this may sound familiar, but remember back during the coronavirus, the lockdowns, and we had this long talk about the words social distancing. Everybody's doing it, right? Oh gosh, everybody's got a mask on. Social distancing. I'm standing 20 feet from an elevator with a sign in it, social distancing. Every corporation had new signs up, social distancing. I'm sure you've seen it in your grocery store if you're even allowed outside now. Little signs on the floor all over the place. Social distance. Oh, I got a social distance. Stand here. Plexiglass on the thing. Social distancing. We're all social distancing. And I came on that night and I asked you, what if that's wrong? What if we completely reordered and remade society for something that's wrong? Now, hear me out. Several doctors said it was wrong. Several doctors said it actually hurts more than it helps. I wasn't trying to just be radical. I wasn't trying to be some guy. I just have to say the opposite thing. What if it's wrong? We remade society for it in every possible way. It's still everywhere you look. What if it's wrong? Now, let's fast forward to our current new narrative out there. What's the narrative? You don't have to go far to see it. Every corporation is putting out a TV commercial on it, sending out a tweet. It's on every local news. It's on every national news. Every professional athlete has something to say about it now. Everybody, it's everywhere. Every politician, we got Democrat senators and congressmen taking a knee in the House. Police racism, racism. We have to end this racism, systemic racism, 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 racism. And here's my question to you. The question is not, what if racism doesn't exist? Because of course racism exists. It has always existed in every society in the history of mankind and will always exist in every society in the history of mankind because racism is in the heart. It's in the hearts of man to think that me and mine are better than you, to fear this group, to fear that group, for whatever reason. I don't like it. It's part of our fallen nature, but it is part of us. So the question is not, does racism still exist? My question to you is this. With everything you've seen, what if the problem in these cities isn't racism at all? What if the problems are something else? Because you have these people, we've had them so many of them on the show. Brandon Tatum comes to mind. So many people are screaming from the rooftops. Granted, the narrative is all that it's racism, but there are people out there of every color saying, there are other problems. What if we're sitting here with 2 shattered legs, an advanced heart disease, and a broken pinky, and telling the world the pinky's my problem? Well, no, the pinky is a problem. It's certainly not the problem. Let's remember, each and every single one of these cities where all this is taking place, these police departments bend over backwards to be more community friendly for the most part. So many of these police departments have passed the body camera things. So many of these police departments have focused on more diversity, so the police department is more reflective of the community. You know, that big city racist police department you like to talk about? I can't speak for all of them, but I've been to New York a bunch. It's not a bunch of white dudes. I live here in Houston. It's not a bunch of white dudes. It's people of every color. So what if racism isn't the problem? What if there are other problems? And we spend all this time attacking a racist police force, police racism, and we're going to end up with communities that still haven't addressed the heart disease and the broken legs, but they got that pinky fixed, and now they're in big trouble. Big, big trouble. Check out this police commissioner.
I think cooler heads need to sit around a table and find a way out of this. You know, there are some people that believe the police are the problem. I happen to be, as you know, almost a 30-year professional in this law enforcement community. I can tell you that the men and women of this department are a part of the solution. And I think that when you talk about public safety, when you talk about communities, when you talk about going to community meetings, I've said this a few times today. The usual thing I get hit at when I go to a community meeting is we want more cops. I think that is the general sentiment, but we are at a moment in time right now where we need all to come together, to find a way out of this, to have open and honest discussions, especially on the law enforcement side, about why people feel as they do. How can we do better to make them feel safe, to make sure we're treating all people equally?
More cops? I mean, let's examine that just for a brief moment here. Picture you're in a terrible neighborhood, Minneapolis. Maybe you're in a bad part of Minneapolis, whichever part that is. It's now burned, smoking. We already have word of factories and businesses who are packing up and leaving. The ones who were there got raided. Now you're passing things that say there aren't going to be any cops around. How's your neighborhood look now? How's your neighborhood look when the businesses and job opportunities leave and the cops, the ones who are left, when they don't come anymore? Has your situation improved or has your situation gone downhill? Again, I ask, what if the cops aren't the problem? I love everything about this audio that was leaked with Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Sit back and enjoy this for a moment.
We need something better because right now we only have 370 whatever National Guards on standby. Half our neighborhoods are already obliterated. It's too late. We have to come up with a better plan because my fear is once they're done looting and rioting and whatever's going to happen tonight, God help us, what happens when they start going after residents, going into the neighborhoods? Once they start trying to break down people's doors so they think they got something, or, we know that people are here to antagonize and incite, and you've got them all pumped today, they're not going to go to bed at 8 o'clock. They're going to turn their focus in the neighborhoods. I've got gangbangers with AK-47s walking around right now, just waiting to settle some scores. What are we going to do, and what do we tell our residents other than good faith people stand up? It's not going to be enough.
Thank you, Alderman. Next question.
Well, no, I want an answer. You commented on everybody. I want an answer. It's not something you ignore. This is a question that I have.
I think you're 100% full of is what I think. If you think
no offense, you then.
Hold on.
Who are you to tell me I'm full of
And if you think we were not ready and we stood by and let the neighborhood go up, there's nothing intelligent that I can say to you.
Well, maybe you should come out and see what's going on.
It's the stupidest thing I have ever heard.
The reality on the ground is people are living in this, and the reality on the ground in these bad neighborhoods is the same as the reality on the ground as in every bad neighborhood in the history of mankind. In bad, poverty-stricken neighborhoods, violent, bad people find each other and they prey on the other people in those neighborhoods. What do you do when there aren't cops anymore? I mean, you realize, I'm going to read this for you here, the weekend of May 29th to the 31st in Chicago, 24 people were killed, 18 of them in one day. People, that's not the cops. That's not the cops. What does that neighborhood look like when the cops are gone? So again, I circle back to my question. What if the problem isn't the police? All right, we got more. Joining me now to offer us some wisdom, BearingArms.com's Cam Edwards. Cam, what is a solution to the violent problems of major urban areas? I mean, it's not as if violence in an urban area is something unique to America or something unique to this time period. The history of mankind is rural areas being more peaceful, probably fewer schools, but a bit more peaceful, a bit more armed. Urban areas, a lot more restaurants, a lot more theater, a lot more crime. So are we facing unique levels of crime in these urban areas? And if we are, what is the solution?
Well, first of all, we're not facing, historically high levels of violent crime in these cities. Actually, violent crime in this country has dropped by about 50% since the early 1990s. So, we can actually look at what has worked in cities around the country, and it's not defunding or disbanding the police department. One of the most effective things we can do is called focused deterrence, Jesse. It's where police identify the most violent individuals in any given city. We know that they are the nexus for violent crime. They disproportionately commit more violent crimes. Once we can identify them, we can focus our efforts on either, sending them to prison for a long period of time, or there are programs that have been actually, fairly successful in getting these folks to change their ways. And that is a part of this as well. When we can put, both of those components in place, where justice is sure and it is swift, as well as the opportunity to change and to redeem yourself, we've actually seen homicide rates drop by more than 50%. We've seen neighborhoods get to the point where kids can play on the sidewalk again. And again, it doesn't involve disbanding the police department. It actually just involves using some common sense and identifying the folks who are, the real problem in any given city. And there aren't that many of them, quite frankly.
Cam, when it comes to race, before we get back to all this cop talk, I wanted to ask you about this. I didn't love it, but I guess I should have seen it coming. Both my sons have grown up, obviously, with us. And I don't want to act like we're one of these really saintly colorblind people, but my kids have friends of all different races. They just do. It's just never anything we ever discussed ever. That's how they were raised. A couple days ago, my oldest son comes to me because he was watching the news, which we left on, which we never do, and he asked me, Dad, are we against black people? Are black people against us? And I was horrified, absolutely horrified, thinking, what in the world, what message are we sending? Cam, I see everything right now, and I see us going the opposite direction in every possible way on race in this country.
Yeah, I do too, Jesse. It's sad to see. It really is. When I got married in 1997, I married a single mom of two biracial kids. And, in Oklahoma in 1997, that was fairly unusual. So I've always sort of had, I guess, a somewhat unique perspective, watching my kids grow up. We have a blended family. My wife and I had 3 kids of our own. Seeing how, that dynamic played out, I'd like to think that, we're a little bit stronger than maybe the typical American family right now. But it is sad because we've got so many folks who are out there and so many voices who are trying to divide us, who really do want us at each other's throat rather than, finding that common ground, finding that commonality that we all frankly have as Americans. And it is sad to see.
Cam, these police departments, clearly there are bad cops. I mean, all over the place. There's 800,000 cops in America. The law of averages says you're going to have some crappy ones. Are there too many crappy ones? You can without doing the thing of, well, just one is too many. Are there way too many? Are they actually keeping their averages low? Or do we have a real police problem?
I don't know, Jesse. I think it probably is going to take some folks that would actually be able to study individual departments. I think that there are some things that police could do, more generally speaking, to increase transparency. I don't have a problem with body cameras, for example. I think, most of the time that's actually going to be a help to police. And it's also going to highlight and provide evidence when cops do something that is illegal or against, department policy. And I think as well, one of the things that I think that we could be talking about is the need for more frontline mental health workers. I've talked to a number of officers, particularly in rural areas, who say sometimes deputies can be tied up for an entire shift because they have to go out on a mental health call. They then have to transport that individual to a mental health hospital. They got to wait around to see what happens. And then, and only then can they go back to work. It seems to me like there is a space to have some conversation about, well, what can we do to make law enforcement function better? What can we do to make, social services function better? But shouting, we've got to disband the police, or we're going to have a police-free world, gets us nowhere close to where we need to be.
Cam, I made the argument in the opening that even if you want to do this little experiment of no police, the people calling for this are all the big city lefties who openly declare that they don't have any weapons at all. It would seem to me, if you're going to go for a eliminate the cops effort, you might want to bone up just a bit on defending yourself.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that this actually exposes a contradiction that's sort of been bubbling under the surface on the left for a few years. One, the desire for criminal justice reform and to have depolicing, and the other, the desire to ban guns and to deprive people of their Second Amendment rights. So if you're telling us that the police are going to pull back and that, they're not going to come out when there's a burglary, maybe there's not going to come out when there's an active robbery call, what you are telling people, implicitly or not, is that it's up to them to protect themselves. And frankly, I see, on the left right now, Jesse, this growing fracture when it comes to the Second Amendment. And I think you're going to find a lot of people on the left suddenly embracing the right to keep and bear arms after calling for a lot of gun control laws over the past few years.
My question and my concern, though, to that, Cam, is how are they going to vote if you're some lefty and you feel unsafe in a city like Minneapolis, New York City, so on and so forth, and you decide you're going to pack it up and move your fam down to rural Texas and buy yourself a firearm. God bless you to it. Are you going to bring all of the policies you've been voting for with you, only add in some gun ownership? Because that's really my concern, Cam.
Listen, I think it's a valid concern. And I think that we will see people vote with their feet. I think that we will see an exodus from places like Minneapolis and New York City. But I don't know that a lot of them are going to necessarily move to Texas. Maybe they'll move to Austin. Maybe they'll move to Houston. But I think a lot of these folks are going to move to the suburbs, right? They're going to move to Westchester County. They're going to move outside of St. Paul. And they're going to, I think the blue suburbs are probably going to become bluer. And I think, frankly, the red parts of the country are probably going to become even redder, because there are going to be, some folks on the left who decide, you know what, I do want to move to Texas. And no, I don't want to bring all of my baggage with me. I want a fresh start, including an embrace of the Second Amendment. We're going to see that as well.
Cam, that's part of my problem is you see all these radical big city proposals. Of course, we have federal proposals, which are going to be absurd. So the lefties are doing that. We have now Kansas is passing emergency measures protecting the Second Amendment. Like you just mentioned, the country is still going this way and going this way in a hurry, and I feel like it's accelerating quickly.
Well, you're not wrong. I think it is accelerating. And I think the question that all of us have to ask ourselves, which is weird because not every generation does have to ask themselves this question, but we do have to ask ourselves, what do we want to do with that? Do we want to deepen the divide? Do we want to, rip off the Band-Aid? Or do we think that there's a chance that somehow we can make this divided house stand together again. And I don't know what that looks like, but, Jesse, you and I have talked enough over the past few years about the idea of the great divorce and, maybe a civil separation as opposed to a civil war. Maybe that's where we are right now. But, frankly, I think we as Americans need to sit down, have this conversation with our friends, with our family, and maybe with each other online if we can quit calling each other names long enough, and actually talk about what we want this country to look like. Are we arguing over the means and not necessarily the ends? Or are the visions that we have for this country just, so far apart that there's no way to patch ourselves together again? It's scary and it's sad to think that we're at that moment in time, but can't help but think that we are.
BearingArms.com. Cam Edwards, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jesse.
We got more show. Hang on. Joining me now, former acting director of ICE, Tom Homan. Tom, first of all, before we get to all the border stuff, before we get to ICE and everything you all do, ICE has been participating in these riots in some ways, correct?
Yes. Not only ICE agents, but Border Patrol agents. And not just regular officers, they're special response teams, guys who have a higher level of training that are used to this type of response. So I said the other day in a Fox interview that I thought this is the first place to go. Go with other federal agents who know what it's like to put handcuffs on somebody, know what it's like to make an arrest. National Guard, they have a role to play if they're needed, but let's call them other federal agents first before the military, just because the federal agents know how to deal with these type of issues.
What changes have you seen when it comes to ICE, when it comes to border level? What changes have you seen under Trump's presidency versus Obama, versus Bush? Not just a Republican or Democrat thing. Have there been real improvements under Trump? Has it been, business as usual?
Well, look, the one thing President Trump did, he wrote a series of executive actions, which he really didn't have to write. I told him one time, I said, you can just write one sentence that you will now do your job. You enforce the laws that were enacted by Congress, which frankly, we weren't allowed to do under President Obama. Just one quick point. Under President Obama, if you had an illegal alien in a jail that was arrested for committing a serious offense, we weren't even allowed to put a detainer on them, a request to hold them, because he hasn't been convicted of the offense yet. Under the Trump administration, if you're in the country illegally, that's enough, because he's here in violation of federal law, so now we can issue detainers. Of course, on the flip side of that, even though we're being told to do our job now, no holds barred, you got sanctuary jurisdictions growing across this country that won't accept our detainers. So even though the president has given us the go-ahead to do our job, the left is continuing to put obstacles in front of us, so it makes it hard to do our job. I can tell you one of the results is the officer morale in the Border Patrol and ICE is at an all-time high, because they are allowed now to enforce the laws and to stand by the oath they took when they became officers.
Tom, I want to clarify something when it comes to Obama, because I think we can all assume that some people in this country, if they take power again, are going to go back to that. You say you arrest somebody suspected of a serious offense, you were not allowed to hold him. Does that mean you were releasing somebody suspected of a serious crime into the population of the United States of America because of the president?
Oh, ICE wasn't releasing the county sheriff or the county jail would release them because there was not a conviction. And look, that's still happening today in sanctuary cities. Look at Chicago. How many murders do they have in a 24-hour period? 18? Is that county commissioner, is that mayor, is that county board doing everything they can to protect the community? No, because Cook County, that sits right in the middle of Chicago, they're releasing gang members and illegal aliens that they arrested, right? We're not just talking about someone that's in the country illegally. The local police department locked them in a jail cell because they committed some offense, serious enough to lock them up, but they won't give them to ICE when they're done with them. So Chicago, they're not doing everything they can to protect their citizens because you're not working with ICE. And we got to remember, one thing that people need to be aware of, you look at the ICE data is clear, 89%. 9 out of 10 of every single person ICE arrests in the interior United States is either convicted criminal or pending criminal charges when we found them come in the county jail. They're not choir boys. So when you fail to cooperate with ICE, you are knowingly releasing public safety threats back into the public, which is just stupid. It's bad policy because they will reoffend. And they'll reoffend in the very communities in which they live, the immigrant community. So sanctuary city policies do not protect the immigrant community at all.
Tom, what do you think the motivation is when it comes to something like you described? And I realize that we're not talking about ICE policy specifically. We're just talking about the human mind. Everything you just described absolutely horrifies me, but it's also not something I can make sense out of either. You're a mayor, you're part of Cook County, you have a bad guy, and you're purposely putting him back into your population. Why? I guess I don't understand the motivation.
You know, it's hard for me to understand it because as a 34-year cop, I don't understand. Look, and I'm not blaming the officers out there. The officers want to work with ICE. It's the politicians. It's the mayors that, you know, who the chief works for the mayor. It's the sheriffs who get elected. And if they're in a very left-leaning county, you know, many of these guys are putting their political futures, their political ambitions head of the oath of office they took. I've said it many times. The sheriff in Los Angeles County, when he was running for election, first thing he said was, if you elect me, first thing I'm going to do is kick ICE out of my jail. So when he said that, and I've said it out loud, I've said it on TV, when he made that decision that day and he kicked ICE out of the jail, he stopped being a cop and became a politician. I think the left, they hate this president so much that they're willing to put a lot of things on the table, including community safety, to see this president fail on his number one campaign promise, which is to, you know, enforce immigration law, secure our border. If there's no other reason for it, because I've said in many interviews, there's no downside on securing our border. There's no downside unless illegal immigration. There's no downside unless illegal drugs coming across the border. There's no downside in stopping 31% of women being raped that make the journey. There's no downside on children dying, stopping children from dying making that journey. There's no downside in taking millions of dollars a day out of the hands of the cartels that smuggle these people. There's no downside. I don't care if Republican, a Democrat, independent, there's no downside. But the only upside for them is, see this president fail on number one campaign promise. This is about 2020. This is about the election. And I got news for him. This president's succeeding without him. There's an 85% decline in illegal immigration on the southwest border because what he's done with Mexico, Central America, the Remain in Mexico program, building the wall. 85% decline, which he has succeeded by himself. No help from Congress, no help from the judges. So wake up call to the left. He's still winning.
What are, in general, the nationalities of the people coming here across our southern border? And I say this as somebody, I've got a buddy who worked for Border Patrol forever, and he said only about half the people they caught were actually Mexicans. He said there were people Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and it changes depending on the political conditions in the country they're fleeing. Is that still, now this was 5-10 years ago when we had this conversation, is that still pretty on par? Have those numbers skewed? Where are these people coming from?
The vast majority of illegal entrants are Central Americans coming from the triangle countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Back in my day, back in the 80s and early 90s, when I was an agent on the front line, 90% of everybody arrested was Mexican national. And a good border patrol agent can process and remove a Mexican national in 20 minutes. So back then, there was over 1 million illegal entries, but people need to remember, a lot of them were re-entries. I arrested the same illegal alien 4 times in one shift. So was it 1 million illegal entries or was like 500,000 that keep coming up? Now, a vast majority are Central Americans who are claiming fear. They're taking advantage of loopholes in the system. You can't just process them and send them back. They claim fear. They have a whole process they have to go through to see a judge. Thankfully, the president, in his wisdom, came up with the Remain in Mexico program. And it makes sense. You wait in Mexico until you're hearing, because if we bring you to the United States, we can't detain you because of the court rulings. We have to release you. 50% of them will never show up in immigration court, actually 51%. And the ones that actually do show up in court, they'll get a final order from the judge and they'll ignore it and go into the wind. That's why there's over 1 million illegal aliens in this country right now that are immigration fugitives. They had due process at great taxpayer expense. We spend billions of dollars on border security, detention, immigration courts. They had their due process, and a federal judge told them they must leave, and they didn't. That's why the Remain in Mexico program makes sense for two reasons. Number one, hold them accountable. We'll make sure they see it. So if the judge orders them removed, they'll be removed. Second thing it does is that if you're fleeing persecution in Guatemala, that means you're fearing persecution from that government because your race, religion, social ethnic groups, whatever. Once you leave that country, you have escaped that fear from that government. And that's why the president says, and I agree with him, once you get to Mexico, you escape that persecution in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. You have now left that country. You are no longer in fear of that country, that government. So why aren't you claiming asylum in the first free country you come to? So it really isn't about asylum, because 90% of those that claim asylum from Central America, actually 89.8% of Central Americans that claim asylum at our border never get relief from the U.S. courts because they don't qualify by law. So it makes sense to keep it in Mexico. Let them claim asylum in Mexico.
Tom Homan, thank you so much for that wisdom tonight, sir.
I appreciate it.
We forget about the border, don't we? It's easy to forget about. It's not, you know, the bright shining lights every single day, but it's still there and still a problem and will be for a while. All right, we'll be back. These are trying times. People are facing all sorts of different hardships and challenges. The news is crazy out there. So I think we should all take a moment and extend our sympathies to this young lady.
No, I'm not exactly the voice that people need to be hearing right now. In fact, I need more confirmation that this is real. I've gotten some, but I need more confirmation that this is real. Trump supporters got an email that said that this email is for patriots only. You've been identified as one of President Trump's fiercest and most loyal defenders, and according to your donor file, you'd make an excellent addition to the Trump army. It goes on to tell them that they would get a limited edition camo Keep America Great hat, to let them know that you are the president's first line of defense when it comes to fighting off the liberal mob. I don't know if you know, Hitler made Jews wear yellow stars. This feels like the reverse of that.
Parents, please, we must do a better job raising children who are ready for this world. I'll see you tomorrow.